Rebecca has asked me to introduce our speaker. I want to thank you for coming to our second Soup for the Soul. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Tim Huffman. Read your CV here, your bio. Dr. Tim Huffman is an associate professor in SLU's Department of Communication. He's a researcher, teacher, and activist focused on social justice organizing, particularly around issues of homelessness. He takes a community-based approach to understanding and promoting socially just communication by compassion and community. He's committed to improving the ways we communicate and organize in response to social justice issues. He holds an MA in speech communication from SIUE and completed a certificate in nonprofit leadership and his doctoral work at the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication at Arizona State University. Let us now welcome Dr. Tim Huffman.
So, thank you for your warm welcome and the very stimulating conversation up until this point. I hope that we can continue that trend. So I could lecture to you for the rest of the hour, but that's definitely not what we're going to do. This series is in the spirit of Lent, thinking about peacemaking, thinking about the transformation of our hearts and society, look across the different topics. There are really interesting things happening on Thursday for the next weeks other than spring break. So what I want to start with today is just on the reality of suffering. And so we're going to talk about how we respond to when people are suffering. But I think that in order to do that, maybe in the spirit of the season, I want to take the position of sufferer first. And so I want us to just kind of take a moment and think of a time that has happened recently where we needed care. Something in your life, physical, something was happening to your soul, physical, mental, spiritual, something. And you really needed care. And I want you to think about whether or not you got the care that you needed. Did you get the kind of care? Did you get any care? Did you get some care but not enough? Did you get the right kind of care? Maybe just a little too much? Or right kind of care from the wrong person? I don't know. Just think about how it went for you, So like there's this suffering. And let's say you made it through it on your own. Nobody did care for you. Is there a kind of care that you could imagine that would have been ideal? So starting in this place, I'd like us just to kind of take a moment and then turn to the person sitting next with you. If you're comfortable, share your story. If you're not, listen to their story. If both of you aren't comfortable sharing, look in each other's eyes. All right, vibe. Yeah, let's take a moment. Take 2 minutes. Share a story of suffering with the person next to you, and how did were you cared for? How did that go? Right. So bring your reflection, your sharing, your listening to a close. So if you want to keep talking, let's talk in the large group. So is someone, you heard your own story, the stories of others. For those situations that it went well, what was the thing about that care that made it respond to your suffering in the way that you needed? Why did it go well? I mean, you could tell us the story. If you don't know why, we can ask you questions and try to get to it. But why for those stories that it went well, why did it go well? Did anyone tell a story of it going well? No. All right. Well, let's dig into why it didn't go well. All right. For those of you who it didn't go well, why did it not go well?
Sounds like from what was shared with our group, that there just wasn't enough time. Like this person, something happened. And then the person that it happened to, they needed to get somewhere else.
Sure.
So someone sort of tried to address and make sure it was okay, but then just sort of for lack of time, appropriate care couldn't be given.
Yeah.
And then the day just.
Does this
kept going.
resonate with anyone else? Have you ever tried to care for someone, but you just didn't really actually have the time, and so you failed? Or someone tried to take care of you, or they told you they cared for you, but they didn't actually make the time, and so how real was that? Anyway, Krista? Oh, are you just playing with your hand?
Oh, I was raising it and then I was.
Okay.
Combination of both.
Both. All right.
Do you want me to
Hit it.
turn my, so something that I talked about was, it was the case of not feeling listened to.
Yeah.
In my situation, there was just like something that had torn apart my friend group back home, and it was in the midst of COVID, and I was living by myself, and it was like there was 20 people in this group, all of them just turned away from me. And there was no one that was willing to listen or hear my side of the story, and it just felt very isolating and very lonely.
Sure.
And it was like if just one person had taken the time to listen and to understand and know the truth about the situation, I would have felt, whether or not they agree with me or not,
Sure.
it would have been nice to just have someone take that minute or two to just listen to me and save me from the downward spiral I eventually went in.
Right. So sort of building off of the time reflection, it takes time. Love takes time. But also there's this like being open to or listening to, and you're like, hey, like I don't need you to say that I'm right. I don't need you to say that they're wrong. I don't need you to say that you agree with me 100%. But like, I do need someone to hear me. Yeah. Yeah, to be heard or held, even in the suffering, right? Like, no, I can't take the pain away, but I can be here with you in it. Yeah. For other folks, one or two more. What did it not go well? What about the situation made it, yeah, off kilter, less caring than it could have been?
Just jumping on what Krista said, and experiences where people are assuming what I need, and so like, or trying to fix the problem, like, so it's not like they bypass even like, hey, how are you feeling? It's like, okay, let's get to a solution. And oftentimes I'm not looking for a solution. I just want someone to hear me.
Right. Or they could be wrong about what you need.
Yeah, or
and be pushing a thing that they certainly might need if they were in that given situation, but you don't. Right. Yeah, or maybe it even is something that I need, but you forcing it on me takes away my feeling of agency and caring for myself. And that if you had had a conversation that helped me get to realizing that I needed that, I'd feel differently about it than you just, yeah, pushing it on me, for sure. Any others that kind of want to, yeah, hit it?
I think someone trying to fix me, like not necessarily fix the issue. Like I don't need fixing, I just want somebody to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or telling you should feel this other way about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I can fix the problem for you.
Oh, sure. Like swooping in.
Yes, I guess more sweeping in.
Yeah. So one of the things that I meditate on a lot are prepositions, like with and for and against, things like this. And one of the things that I think is really, really helpful when thinking about like what does caring for another person require? What is required from me if I'm trying to be a carer in a given situation? What's likely to get read as care by the other person has a lot to do with the prepositional quality of the interaction. Am I doing something for you? Right? Some situations, maybe that's going to feel inappropriate. Some situations, maybe it feels appropriate. But if I identify needs for you, usually that's gonna annoy you. Yeah. Or if I get my emotions all wrapped up, in your situation and then compound your suffering because I have my own reactions to it. Right. Anyway, so this is not a breaking news flash. But being with really matters, right? And if you have the option to, so a really common understanding of how compassion works is that there are more or less 3 phases. You have to recognize that the person is in some kind of suffering. You have to relate to it on some kind of human way, right? Like you can't just be like, oh, that person's leg is broken. Like it's not like idly noticing. Like you also react, like you have some kind of reaction, right? And then you respond to their suffering, right? If you look at someone as suffering and you're like, oh gosh, it really sucks to be them. We typically don't consider that compassion. That's more like casual sympathy, right? Compassion is that also that other part, that reacting, right? And so as you think through, like, I mean, you don't need a formula for this, but I think that if we could go through our stories of caring and we slowed the frame rate down on the interaction a little, we could see that there are places where we can fail each other in the recognition phase, where I can fail to see that you are suffering or see the wrong thing, or think you're suffering, but for this reason that's other than what it is. Or there fails on the reaction side, right? Like you're suffering. All I do with it is just me suffer also. And I'm not actually in a position to care for you because now I'm just having a shitty day, making you feel bad about the fact that you told me in the first place, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, or yeah, like the emotion that I have, like you tell me and I laugh, right? I mean, that is a reaction, right? But yeah, I mean, sometimes I need to be laughed at. I'm not saying that's never caring, but judiciously. Or in the response, right? Am I swooping in and decentering your own ability to live your life? Or am I capable of being with you, right? When I recognize, right? Such that the way that you look at it influences the way that I look at it. Like that I'm not only vulnerable to your pain, that I'm vulnerable to your world. And that I let your world shape how I see. Am I with you in the reaction, not necessarily having the exact same reaction, but having a reaction that's appropriately related to the emotional moment that you're in? And can I react in a way that is with you, right? Such that you are living and breathing and acting and caring for yourself, and that I'm a part of that, right? I'm a part of your flourishing. So I would like us to engage in some speculative fiction. And I would like you to turn to your partner and retell your story as though there were some entity. I don't care if it's an angel or a human or a chatbot. That was with you, that recognized with you, that related with you, and reacted with you in that situation. And they could be a real or fictive person. You could tell me a story about Tony Stark coming, and just like being really present to your life. Or you can say, no, my friend could have done this, and it would have been better. So let's speculate.
So funny. That made my day.
All right, so as we burst into our ice cream or custard, which is maybe an ice cream, maybe not.
Another wow.
Cold take. So I just want to share a couple of ideas that I think are helpful for organizing our experiences. So we've done mostly empathizing with ourselves, with others, reliving situations. When you told the story, when you created the alternate version, what did you change? Why was your fictional version effective? What is it about it that when you dream of, there was care there?
Go.
Yeah.
One thing that I was really thinking about is like during my time of suffering, I did have care surrounding me, but because I wasn't caring for myself, I almost like couldn't see that care or accept it.
Mhm.
So I said that I would have had like a little like guardian angel almost like on my shoulder who would just tell me like you need to accept the love and the care that people are giving to you and just would like help me to feel like I deserve that care. So that I could actually like get through that suffering like more effectively and easily. That was kind of how I thought of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I hope that there is a guardian angel who sits on your shoulder and tells you that.
Yeah.
And I'll pray for that this Lent.
Mhm.
But also, it's maybe good for us to hear that we can care about someone all we want, but we might also need to help them care about themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And that the way that I show up for you might actually be like living with you in the shit for a little bit. Right. And then being able to pivot out of that and remind you that you're a person worth caring about, and then maybe come back to like directly caring for you or something like that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way that could work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good idea too.
so I don't know. That's the thing that tell me your name.
I'm Marlo.
Marlo. Maybe that's a thing. That's a good way to love Marlo. Maybe it's a good way to love lots of us. For another one, what did you change? What about what you changed made it work?
I think our common theme was maybe just feeling seen, and had someone taken the time to see or ask or inquire, there would have been more, like, we would have felt more, less lonely, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, seeing that's like the three main things: recognizing, relate, respond. Right? So you're not going to get cared for if nobody notices. Right? Yeah, for sure. But there is something weird to it, right? Like just that someone is there to see it. Like I could imagine, losing a family member, but feeling grateful that there was an ambulance there who was trying to help. You know what I mean? Like well, they didn't help. Why would that make me feel better? Well, because someone was fucking there, right? Yeah. So I'm absolutely. I did something deep and true about that. Yeah. One more? What's something that you changed about your story to make it more caring? Yeah.
The person that was sharing with us, imagined that there would just be more time
Mm-hmm.
to talk about what happened or for someone to like the recognition part. And I'm gonna take the liberty of taking it a fictional step further of like, and then we dismantled the whole capitalist system we live in.
Yeah.
I do think that because of the frameworks we live in, our communication is very transactional and very rushed.
Interesting. Yeah.
And or can be. And I'm just thinking about COVID, like I don't think we really reckoned with what it's done to us, and the systems don't allow us to do so, I think, in a way that would be healing to people. I took it really far, so.
No, great. Love it. No, but I mean, it's important to recognize that our individual interactions happen inside broader systems and institutions, right? And some things are rendered appropriate, inappropriate by those broader contexts, right? So there are things I can do in campus ministry that I can't do in the classroom, and there are things that I can do in the mall that I can't do in a graveyard, right? And just recognizing like we live inside of a prevailing moment in human history where time has been like turned into a commodity. Like if I'm spending time with you, part of why I'm saying I care for you is because I'm willing to lose money to do it. right? Like, I find that loving you is worth the opportunity cost. I mean, like,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, it's wild, right? Like, yeah. Interesting. So, I guess what in closing, when I think about like what compassion is, what the heart of love is, how care works, I largely think that the reason it sucks when people swoop in to solve our problems, and the reason that it sucks when people identify problems that we don't have, is that in those interactions, there's a fancy word called interpolation, and it basically means putting someone into the subject position of. So if I say, if anyone wants to contribute, please raise your hand. Right now, I'm a teacher, so I can say that we're at a school, and I like make you a student when I say that. Does that make sense? I don't say, okay, you're all students now. But if I say, if you want to share, raise your hand, I've like with my words put you into the position of student, right? If I'm walking across the street and a uniformed human with a live firearm says, hey, stop, they throw me into a subject position of like criminal or someone who's under the eye, like I become a thing, right? When someone follows you around a store, the security guard follows you around the store because they're afraid that you're going to be shoplifting. We can, by the way that we interact with each other, we interpolate, we put each other into the subject position of whatever, right? And so when we project a need onto someone, we're also projecting an identity, right? When we act in a way that isn't what the person would want for themselves, yeah, like to go back to Sue's, someone swooping in, they're not saying it, but they're basically saying I can't take care of myself, right? And so recognizing that care lives with these other components of human power, right? And we can say, oh, compassion, it's nice and cute and fun, but like, what gives you the right to care about another person in the way that you're trying to do so, right? And I don't mean to like make love and care I don't know, like this thing that you can do wrong, but like let's face it, you can do it wrong. So anyway, because if you've ever try to communicate with any human ever, just because you intended to be nice doesn't mean you came off that way. Just because you intended to sound smart doesn't mean that you did. Just because you intended that comment to be funny doesn't mean anybody's laughing, right? And you can hang on that intention, until the cows come home. But whether or not people encounter your interactions as loving or caring or compassionate is probably going to require you to pay attention to these things. So, in closing, be present, share your time, be immediate. The ordinary ones like make good eye contact and nod when people talk, right? So that they get it. But also think about the person that your interactions is calling the other person to be, and is that someone that they want to be? And when all other strategies are lost, just try to be with them as you recognize, react, and respond. All right. That's all I have. I'm gonna sit and eat
Yes.
concrete, but we're now at the 1 o'clock hour, basically. I guess if you have 2 minutes, I didn't leave any time for questions or comments. But we don't have to do that.
Will you talk about de-escalation the next time you come visit us?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna talk about them both, but
That's cool.
we just got into it.
I loved it.
Yeah. Yes. No, we just got through the care part.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.